because our body is always listening to us. She responds to how we think and feel about her. And I believe the more that we love her and appreciate her, the more she thrives. And so having an actual relationship with our body where we're in communication, we're one with her, helps us come out of that space of like separation and nitpicking and control and into more like, this is my home, and how can I come into even deeper relationship with this beautiful part of myself, even when she's not exactly how I want her to be.
2, 1, 0.
Hi and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. This is your host, Orion. Today we're going to dive into your feminine self. We're going to learn how to become more embodied, and what is it to be in your feminine, what is it to be in your masculine, and how can we bring the both together in a way that creates the best life for us. So this episode is more for women, but if you are a man, you can still learn a lot about your female friends by listening to this. I think it's going to be actually a really fascinating thing for you to kind of like glimpse behind the curtain and see more into the world of the feminine. Connie Chapman is a woman's life coach, feminine embodiment mentor, and host of the Awaken Radio podcast. For the past decade, through her coaching programs and online courses, she has supported thousands of women on the journey of healing, power reclamation, and self-transformation. Her mission is to help women embody their divine feminine energy and build a loving relationship with themselves so they can feel confident, worthy, whole, and empowered from within and become magnetic to the life and relationships they desire. Connie's work is based deeply on her own journey, and her unique approach combines with intuitive wisdom, transformational coaching skills, and somatic healing to create deep and lasting change. In this episode, you will learn how to deeply connect to yourself, how to connect with your feminine essence and with your masculine essence, how to claim what you want, and how to listen to your desires. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Connie, and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Orion. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Yeah, me too. Before we begin, can you share a bit about yourself and your origin story and what brought you to be this phenomenal coach woman that you are today?
Thank you. My journey has been quite a long one. It started when I was around 20. I first got into personal development and healing when I was around 20 years old. After having a difficult time in my teenage years with, acne, low self-esteem, body image, insecurities, my mum introduced me to yoga, to naturopathy, to personal development books, and to Reiki. And I really started this kind of journey of awakening. And so throughout my 20s, I read every self-help book that I could find. I went to yoga classes. I went to Tony Robbins, walked on hot coals with Tony Robbins, went to Buddhist retreats. And I was just so curious about learning about myself and working on myself and healing from so many of the struggles that I'd had up until that point in my life. And, I was working in another career at the time, but, I had this closet kind of spiritual life where behind the scenes, I was so obsessed with learning and growth. And then I got to around the age, it was about 28, 29, and I was at a crossroads in my career. Like I wasn't happy in the work that I was doing. And so I found a life coach to work with. I decided to work with someone to support me because after doing all the personal growth work, I knew that I wanted to help people. I wanted to teach people what I had learned, but I didn't believe in myself. I didn't have any confidence to do that. I was like, who am I to teach people? So I started working with this coach, and she really supported me to connect with, what I wanted. I started writing on a blog and sharing my lessons and learnings. And then I decided to go on to train as a life coach. And so she really supported me to find the confidence to go and follow what I wanted to do. And I trained as a life coach. I ended up quitting my job and building this business. And my coaching business grew really quickly in the first couple of years, but I was hustling hard. I was working around the clock. I was obsessed with my business. I was obsessed with results and outcomes and making money. And I was running myself into the ground. Like I was anxious all the time. I couldn't relax. I couldn't rest, couldn't spend time with people. And then a few years into my business, my boyfriend at the time broke up with me. I had been with him for 3.5 years. I thought we were going to get married, and he just unexpectedly broke up with me. And I was floored, and I didn't know why the relationship ended. And it wasn't until later, that I recognized I was not prioritizing him. I was not prioritizing the relationship. I was so in my masculine energy. I was so in my head, and I was so work obsessed. And so then a few months after that breakup, I found myself at a friend's wedding, and there was this love tarot card reader there, and she was pulling cards and doing readings. And I sat down with her, and she pulled a few cards for me, and she looked at me dead in the eyes, and she said, "Sweetheart, you are too connected to your masculine energy. You need to stop walking with your shoulders, and you need to start walking with your hips."
Nice.
She said, "This is why you're not in a relationship." And I burst into tears, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about this masculine feminine stuff.
You cried in front of her?
Yeah, I cried on the spot. It hit me in the heart.
What a nice wedding.
Well, I ran off to my friends and I was like, oh my gosh. And I had a friend at the wedding who was a feminine embodiment teacher and a coach, and I started working with her.
How perfect.
That was the beginning of my feminine reclamation, and it's been an amazing journey since then of really, reconnecting with these parts of myself and teaching other women how to do it as well.
What was your first lesson in feminine embodiment?
Oh, what a beautiful question. I think it was actually feeling, like learning how to let myself feel my emotions and be vulnerable, and that it's safe to come into my heart and feel deeply. I think I was afraid to feel for a long time because I felt like my emotions would overwhelm me. I didn't know what to do with them. I think I saw it was weak to be a highly emotional person. I think, one of my first sessions with my coach, I just cried, and letting myself be seen in my tenderness and my vulnerability was such a big part of that journey.
What did you guys do? Were you guys doing movement? Were you guys doing visualizations? How do you dive into embodiment?
Well, actually, one of the very first things she got me to do was dance. She put on a song and she said, "I want you to stand up and dance." And I think she wanted to see how connected I was to my body and how fluidly I was able to move. And of course, I was incredibly uncomfortable. But one of the things I started doing was taking on dance as a morning practice. So I used to wake up every morning and just work. That was the first thing I did when I woke up, was had a cup of coffee and sat on the computer. And instead, I started setting up this ritual space in the morning with candles, and I'd put on some nice sort of lingerie or underwear sometimes and dance in front of the mirror. So she really taught me to come into my body, to connect with my emotions. We were working on the qualities of receiving, like letting myself receive support. We worked a lot on that.
How did you receive support?
Well, I didn't know how to initially. And I think that was one of my hardest things. And I remember one exercise she did with me was she got me to just sit and feel the support of the chair below me. And she's like, "Can you feel that in this moment you're being supported?" And even to feel the support of her, like her presence. And I think I just had this story that I was never supported. I couldn't rely on anyone. So I just closed off to it. But she was encouraging me just to open to the experience of receiving support and what that felt like. Yeah, so it was a lot of little things she gave me that opened up new possibilities to me when I was working with her.
Do you still do this morning ritual?
I do. It's different now. It looks different because when you work with the feminine, the way you take care of her is different every day depending on what she needs. But yeah, I'm devoted to that, to setting that time and space every day to come into my body, come into my heart, connect with what I'm feeling, and practice something that nurtures that side of myself. Yeah.
And what's the difference between the first dances to today's dances?
Well, actually, in between that time, I did pole dancing, which was incredible for me.
Okay, who did you do it with?
I did it in Sydney, Australia. There's a studio there called Pole Dance Academy, and they have some beautiful teachers there who, have competed and are really good at what they do. That opened me up to learn how to properly move my body in a sensual way. So I think initially my movement, was probably more rigid and more thought out, like what do I look like? And now it's so fluid. It's like you move like water, and it's sensual and it's sexual and it's the full range of the feminine rather than just one expression of her, which I think that was all I could embody back in the day, was one version of her.
Yeah, my story is a little similar to yours. I was in an abusive relationship and I got very much into my masculine. And interestingly enough, it was a similar age also. And I couldn't date guys because I would emasculate every guy I don't know, emasculate is a big word, but I would make sure that I'm not getting hurt and make sure that I will test that guy again and again and again, make sure to show him and prove to him that I'm just as strong as the guys, you know? And I couldn't figure out why I cannot find anyone for more than a few months because I didn't want to date another male energy. And for me, being feminine was being taken advantage of or being weak. So I didn't want to acknowledge that part of me, and I suppressed her because when I'm in my feminine, I get hurt. But then I went to Tony Robbins as well, and I did unleash the power within, which gave me strength. But then I did Date with Destiny, and the relationship day, I learned about feminine, masculine energies, and I was so emotional that day. I was like, "What? No, not giving up my masculine." But at the end of the day, I sat by a little waterfall, and I wrote my relationship vision, not only what I want, but who do I need to become. And part of who I needed to become was softer, more caring, more confident, whatever it was, like who am I going to be for that person? And I sat there and I wrote it down, and then I started crying. It was 1 a.m. I was by myself, and then I started laughing and then crying and laughing, laughing. It was really, I don't know, an explosion of emotion, and a total surrender, a complete, like one of the biggest surrender moments in my life. And then I said, God, I can't do it on my own. Like, I hand it to you. Please guide me. I completely surrendered. And 48 hours later, I found the incredible man that is my husband today.
Wow.
And he proposed to me 9 days after we met in a hot air balloon in Vegas.
Wow, that's an incredible story.
Yes, and I said no. But then a year later, he proposed to me in the same waterfall where I prayed for him to show up. And that time I said yes. And now we have a son together, and he's a really incredible man. Like I'm so blessed, really feeling very, very blessed. And what I learned that night is that I need to connect to my femininity, but I didn't know how. So I took a similar path where I studied with Sheila Kelly. Do you know her?
Yeah, I've heard of her. Is that S Factor?
Yeah, S Factor.
Yeah.
So I started doing pole dancing with her, and I started learning a lot about feminine and feminine movement and all that. And that helped me a lot in my relationship because the person that I was prior to that couldn't hold a relationship ever. I had to be a vibrational match and in harmony with love, with relationship, with self-love.
Yeah.
When you were telling me your story, I can see some parallels, and I was like, oh wow, that's pretty neat. That's kind of cool. And I also been to Tony Robbins in Australia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was really cool.
But on that, I just want to say I really relate to what you shared around the relationship piece, because I think this is a missing piece for a lot of women who are struggling to have their relationships working with men or call in the type of man they want, is that they're disconnected from their feminine. And it really is the key to having that thriving relationship, to calling in that person. And that was my experience, after that relationship ended. It took me 6 years of, a lot of healing and a lot of feminine reclamation before I was able to call in my next partner. I could see there was still a lot of childhood wounds playing out for me around the feminine and around my relationship with men. But it was when I truly came into my feminine that I called in a man so effortlessly and so easily. And I met him in a season of my life where I felt just so full and happy and complete in who I was as a woman. There was no neediness. There was no trying to find him or chase him. I was so magnetic, and he just found me. And that really is the gift of our feminine, is just how magnetic that energy is to men.
Yeah, and I love what you said. I was so full with myself, full with my essence. You didn't look for anyone to complete you. And a lot of people are looking for my other half. It's not your other half. It's like two wholes that are coming together and creating a bigger, more magnificent thing. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I really see it as like an overflow. Like, we're both here to be responsible for our own wholeness, our own happiness, our own fullness, and then we get to overflow all the energy that we create and cultivate within ourselves into the relationship. And so what happens between the two of you is this incredible creation of energy. And I think it's so important for us as women to really be feeling in ourselves that space we sometimes get into of when we feel empty or needy or like something's missing, and we start looking externally, either for our partner to show up a certain way for us or to find that partner or to make more money, whatever it is. And it's always when we come in and tend to ourselves and to our relationship with ourselves, and we fill ourselves up with self-love and we meet our own needs and we show up in the way that we really need for ourselves. I think that's when we truly get to receive. Because I think if you're not coming from fullness, you're just trying to get to fill a void. But when you're coming from fullness, then you can actually really receive, because what is being given to you is just a reflection of what you've already cultivated within. And so I really think the key to like deeper receiving is actually first giving and receiving within ourselves. And then we can really receive that from a partner.
Yes. So all this neediness, it comes from hurt and it comes from wounds. And I saw that you're talking about the wounded feminine and the wounded masculine. What are those and what can we do about it?
Yes, when we talk about the way the wounded feminine or wounded masculine expresses through us, it's when the energy of the masculine and feminine energy inside of us, because we all have both energies, is running in a way that is based on our wounding from childhood. And so if we have woundings around the feminine, we have a wounding around love a lot of the time, where we are looking outside of ourselves for love rather than feeling whole and full like we are the source of the love. So the wounded feminine will look like a lot of insecurity, neediness, seeking externally for love and validation. That's that part of us that as a child that wasn't loved in the way she really wanted and needed, and she set up this pattern of seeking for it externally. So the wounded feminine is not our empowered divine feminine. It's that feminine we feel that is insecure, needy, constantly looking outside of herself for validation and approval. And then the wounded masculine within us is really set up around the model of feeling enough and feeling worthy based on like what we're doing. And so when we're in a wounded masculine, this often comes from our relationship with our father. If we were really praised and loved for achieving a lot, being perfect, being really smart and academic, we will feel like in order to feel enough and worthy in the world, we have to do, we have to achieve, we have to be perfect. And neither of these energies are healthy embodied expression of masculine and feminine. They point to the fact that there's unresolved wounds for our inner child that we have to work on so that we can heal how we're expressing our feminine and masculine energy inside of us.
Was that your experience, that you needed to be perfect all the time?
Absolutely. Like the way that I grew up was my mum was very much in wounded feminine. So she was very disempowered, very overly emotional, very victim mentality. And she was very dependent on my father for finances and support. Whereas my dad was successful. He's a business owner. He had all the freedom, all the money. And I, as the eldest daughter, got a lot of praise for being responsible, good, academic, successful, good at sport, getting good grades. And so I admired my dad and I just wanted his love so much. I wanted to be like him. So I just felt like, okay, to be more of what dad wants, I have to succeed. I have to be perfect. I have to achieve all the time, and that's what will get me love. And so there's been a big pattern I've had to unravel throughout my life, is feeling that in order to be enough, I have to be perfect. It's a tough one.
Yes. So what kind of work do you do in order to be okay with not being perfect?
It starts with inner child work. I really had to go back and look at what that little girl learned about herself and look at the conditional model of love that she received or that she felt she received, where it felt like to her she wasn't enough for just being herself. She had to be doing and achieving to be enough. So I work with the inner child in that I take my adult self now back to connect with her, and I help shift her perspective and change her belief systems about herself, and talk with her and work with her to celebrate everything about her besides just her being perfect, so that she can feel like she is loved and she is enough for all of herself, for all of who she is. So that's sort of some of the deeper healing work. And then now, it's witnessing when it plays out. I see it now and I can catch it and I can notice the pattern. And sometimes for me, it's encouraging myself just to lean into my messy and perfect feminine, because the feminine isn't perfect. She's
super messy,
full expression. She's chaos. She's wildness, right? So I have to say, Connie, just express yourself however you want. Don't worry about how it looks, or just put that piece of writing out there, even though it isn't perfect, or let the house be messy for the day and don't worry about it. I sort of have to encourage myself into that more relaxed feminine space. And I also have to work on loving myself. And this is what I do regularly, even when I'm not perfect, because the perfectionist will only love herself and be proud of herself when she's perfect.
That's such a high, impossible bar. It's impossible.
It's unattainable. So we have to set up a new model of love within ourselves where we will give love to ourselves even when we're not perfect. And that comes down to how we love and support ourselves, in every moment.
And one of the exercises I did with myself the other day is went back to times in my life where I was messy, where I was not proud of myself, or not even proud, I was ashamed of myself. And that was so hard. And I have to do it again and again to actually really embrace her. I think I embraced her, and I think there is more work to be done. It's endless.
Yeah.
So I went back to those moments where I was ashamed of myself and I didn't want to look at, and I kind of like suppressed it to the back of my mind. I'm like, I'm not that. That just happened to somebody else. And I went back to those moments and I looked at them and I had a lot of compassion and a lot of love. And I hugged the younger me from, it's not only childhood, it's throughout life. We do messy things.
Yes.
We do things we're not proud of, but you can't be completely who you are or completely genuine without embracing all your shadows, all your shadow parts. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of the feminine work, is actually being able to embrace the full range of the feminine, which is actually like, sometimes she expresses herself as this beautiful, ethereal, put together, gorgeous goddess energy. And other times she's wild and messy and all over the place and imperfect and flawed. And, she's the full expression. And like you said, that return to wholeness within ourselves is being able to embrace and allow all of ourselves. And I love that exercise you said you took yourself through, because so many of us have memories from the past that we hold shame around and we just push them into the shadows.
it's not me. This is who I am. Look, world, this is who I am. I am perfect.
Yes, yes.
Or close to it.
Yeah. And then, that shame, it breeds in the shadows, but shame can't survive in the light. And when you shine a light upon it and you witness it and you look at it with love and compassion, and you know that you were just doing the best that you could in that moment, you can bring love.
Yeah, that was so deep. I'm gonna be working with a couple of stylists, and I had a meeting with them yesterday because I did a closet cleanse and I have nothing to wear. I need help. So I met them and I arrived to the call. My little one was screaming and I was just finishing like cooking and making the food, and I was sweaty. I live in Miami. It's hot, super hot. And my hair was messy and my shirt was off. And I was like, hi, how are you? And they look like, tip top, makeup done, hair done. Everything looks so beautiful. And I'm just like, all this like messy me coming up. I'm like, hey, how are you? I'm tired and hot. How are you? But I think it was a refreshing icebreaker, because sometimes we are more relatable when we are like that. I hope I was relatable.
It's real, right? And I think we're craving that realness, because when we see that realness in someone else, it helps us accept and embrace the realness and the imperfection of ourselves too.
Yes. So what are your some of your methods or ways to dive into the feminine besides dance?
Well, I think anything that brings us into our body. So the body is such a beautiful doorway into the feminine. And I really think of the feminine as being the realm of like shoulders down. We really come into the heart and into the womb and down into the yoni and into the hips. And, for us as the feminine, our wisdom and our power is found in our bodies. So anything that connects you with your body, like obviously I love dance, but also even just stretching and intuitive movement can be really beautiful, because it brings you into the felt sense. Anything that brings you into the felt sensations of the body. So I find that really useful as a feminine practice if I'm in a morning practice or just moving through my day, to just take a few moments to close my eyes and just check in on like what's happening in my body right now. What sensations can I feel? What energy or emotions are alive? And what is my body needing? So the body is a beautiful reference point around your relationship to the feminine and how connected you are to her, how deeply you're listening to her, and how deeply you're feeling her. So anything that helps us get into our bodies energies. I love using self-care and ritual, things that are very nourishing and nurturing, because the feminine is really that beautiful energy of love, like bringing that love and nurturing energy to ourselves. So I love baths. Baths are beautiful for coming into your feminine. You know, just like a gentle yoga practice, getting a massage, reading a book, sitting in the sun, going for a swim in the ocean, all these things that allow me to really deeply take care of myself. I love bringing in other practices. I think when we bring in our sensuality, so our five senses, we bring in things like touch and smell and taste and sound. So I love really tactile practices, like breast massage is a beautiful one with some gorgeous oil. It opens the heart. It connects you in with the feminine energy of your breasts. You know, even bringing the massage down to your womb, massaging your whole body, your belly with a gorgeous body oil. It's one that I love.
What's your favorite oil?
I have an oil behind me, actually. I can't think of the name, but it's a rose oil.
Oh, I like rose.
I think the brand is The Seek, it might be called. But I love an oil that, has either a floral or an earthy kind of essential oil scent to it. Such a beautiful way to like bring in sensuality.
It's so funny you're saying that, and I'm like, yeah, I used essentials oil yesterday because my kid was sick and I had to put him in the room, but I haven't used them on myself for a while for that purpose.
I even just put a bit of essential oil under my nose before I came on here, because I find the smell instantly shifts my energy. And there can be so many beautiful ways through our day as women that we can have these little touch points of connection to the feminine. It can be in what we choose to wear. Like even what I've chosen to wear makes me feel very feminine. I really like the feel of this outfit.
I really like it. It's so nice.
Thank you. I love my white crochet at the moment. You know, even having my salt lamp on, I've got some beautiful lighting. I can smell the essential oil. When I work, I always have music, have a nice cup of tea. We're bringing in the sensual pleasures. It's very nourishing to our feminine. So they're some of my favorites. So yeah, embodiment work, tuning into the felt sense, movement, touch, sensuality, getting out in nature. Nature is so nourishing to our feminine. Get your feet on the earth, get the sun on your skin, swim in the water, connect with Mother Nature. She is so nourishing as well. And then the final one that I would say actually is menstrual cycle awareness. So becoming more aware of your feminine cycle, living in deeper alignment with the cycles of your womb and your bleed and the moon, and starting to live more of a feminine cyclical way rather than a masculine linear way. Yeah, they're beautiful starting points.
That's really beautiful. What if your body, like my body, changed a lot in the last few years, and she's not as slim and slender as she used to be? I've been struggling with that. I've been struggling with embracing her. Easier for me to embrace her on, like when I go to an S Factor retreat and everything is beautiful and I'm by myself. But now life is very different, and I start taking a lot of like conscious effort to lose the weight and to eat healthier, and I feel much better. And I remember embracing her also when, like back in the days when she wasn't like the slimmest. Because we go up, we go down, our bodies change. So how do you embrace the body when she's not her ideal weight or ideal something?
Yeah. And this is so challenging for women because there's so many messages out there around how a woman should look and what a body should look like. And there's so much pressure we feel to maintain a particular appearance or size.
And with all the work I've done, which I've done a lot, and everything that I teach, I still am struggling with those things every once in a while. I mean, I have tools, I snap myself out of it way quicker or really quick, but it is still there.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it may still be there. And when we have these patterns that feel very alive and present, we don't want to judge ourselves for them, make ourselves wrong, or think, I have to get rid of this. But I think it's becoming better and better at witnessing it and then knowing how to redirect our focus or energy or support ourselves when it comes up. Because again, if we try to completely get rid of it, we're aiming for perfection. The imperfection is knowing that this stuff might come up, but I'm going to love myself through it, and I'm going to do my best to support myself when it comes up. But something I find useful, and I'm sure you still do a lot of embodiment-based work, is when we get out of the head and we actually get into the body. Because the times we tend to struggle with our body the most is when we're kind of in our mind and we're looking at her like this object, like she is this thing
separated from us,
separate to us, and we've got to fix her and control her, and we're judging her and we're kind of looking at her like this, versus when you are really in your body, you are one with her again. You're inhabiting her, and it actually becomes more about how does it feel to be in my body versus what does my body look like? And so embodiment work, and I love using self-love body massage for this as well. It helps you actually come out of the mind into the heart, into the body, to like feel like your body is your home and to come back into oneness with her and to bring love to her in whatever way you feel you can, whether it is massaging some coconut oil into your feet or into your breasts or into your belly, or doing some mirror work, sitting in front of the mirror and giving appreciation and gratitude to what you love about your body, or thanking her for everything that she does for you, or even asking your body, how can I love you more? How can I nourish you more? How can I take more care of you? Because our body is always listening to us. She responds to how we think and feel about her. And I believe the more that we love her and appreciate her, the more she thrives. And so having an actual relationship with our body where we're in communication, we're one with her, helps us come out of that space of like separation and nitpicking and control, and into more like, this is my home, and how can I come into even deeper relationship with this beautiful part of myself, even when she's not exactly how I want her to be.
Right. With your clients, what kind of shifts did you see with women embracing themselves, embracing their bodies?
I think it's being able to find pleasure in the body and freedom in who they are, because when we don't feel comfortable in our appearance or who we are, that completely limits our expression, our fullness, our experience of life, our freedom. And when a woman comes back home just to herself, she feels deeply connected to who she is, she feels safe and at home in her body, there is now this aliveness and radiance that gets to flow through her, because all her energy isn't consumed with her appearance and herself. It's now flowing through as this like river of life force, and she's alive, she's expressed, she's embodied, she's free. And so even being able to, something that's really helped me actually with my relationship with my body is really finding more pleasure. I think as women, part of the purpose of our bodies is our pleasure. And when we start to see the body as an opportunity for deep pleasure in every moment, it shifts our relationship to her. And so pleasure can be found in eating, in what you're wearing, in what you can smell, in how it feels to be touched. And we start to see the body as like this beautiful doorway into pleasure versus this thing that needs to look a certain way to get love in the world. And there's such a liberation that can happen in a woman from that journey.
When a woman is so radiant and open and in her feminine, I feel like without proper boundaries, this is also another doorway to actually getting hurt by the men and by women that may be a little jealous. What are your thoughts about that?
That is such a good point, because this is actually a fear that I think women hold, is if I become too radiant, too magnetic, too connected to my life force, I'm going to attract unwanted attention. People are going to be jealous of me. I won't be able to stop the amount of energy that's going to come my way. And so this really leads us into talking about the divine feminine, because the embodied divine feminine is not just in her full open radiant feminine. She also has an inner masculine energy that she's cultivated that's very healthy, and that allows her to be discerning, to have boundaries, and to draw on her divine intuition to protect her.
This is so important, because I remember when I was doing that work, I was having not like traumatic experiences, but like some small experiences with that, where like I'll finish a class, or I'll finish a retreat, and I'm huge, but I never thought about putting boundaries. Like energy is like I'm just like a radiant sun, and some people don't like it. It's like, why aren't you just as sad as I am? and even your partner can look at you and be like, wait a minute, something's off. I don't feel like we're aligned. Let me say something subconsciously to calm her down. And so I love what you're saying about integrating that masculine, those boundaries, inner voice of intuition to still be. So the embodiment of the feminine does not mean that you just push the masculine aside or push boundaries aside.
Yeah, and it also doesn't mean like what you were saying earlier, because what happens is when women haven't got that healthy inner masculine, they'll have what you were saying, which is like the masculine shield, which is like this armor of self-protection and pushing people away and closing as a way to protect themselves. Because feminine energy, it can feel vulnerable to be in. It's a really open, receptive energy. And so our relationship to our intuition is so incredibly important, because that's when, because if we're not in our bodies and listening, we'll miss the red flags. We'll miss the inner message that says, put in a boundary. We'll miss the inner voice that says, you need to say no here. We'll miss the inner voice that says, this person's trying to take advantage of you. You need to get them out of your life. We need to be so in our bodies and listening to that divine intuition, and then being willing to come in with our inner masculine, take action, say no, put in a boundary, be discerning. You need that part of you by your side, or else it will feel way too vulnerable and exposing to be in your feminine energy.
You need to be more like that in order to get things done in the world. And then because when you're just free flowing and feminine and this is amazing, you don't want to do anything. It's just so fun, right?
So true. And we need both energies. And I actually think women thrive the most in their feminine when they have also developed a healthy inner masculine, because the way I see it is your inner masculine is here to be in devotion to your inner feminine. So if your inner feminine says, I desire to create a business in the world where I can serve and support people, like if that's your feminine desire, you need an inner masculine that says, okay, sweetheart, let's do it. I'm going to help you show up and take action. I'm going to help you create a business plan. I'm going to help you put some content out into the world. Because if you don't have the inner masculine, you're just going to be there in all your dreamy desires and nothing's ever going to happen. Yeah, so the inner masculine, the action taker, the planner, the strategy, the mental energy is there to serve and support your feminine to have what she desires.
So how do you combine the both? How do you embrace both?
Well, I think there's that bit of that journey of understanding these energies in yourself and healing any wounds you have around them. So for me with the masculine, I actually resisted masculine energy for a long time, like bringing it in myself, because all I knew was wounded masculine.
Me too.
Yeah. All I knew was if I bring in the masculine energy, he's just going to push me and force me to do all this stuff. And it's going to deplete me. It's going to burn me out. And so I don't want that energy. So it's a little bit of a journey. And part of it for me was I had to heal my relationship to my dad and to his unhealthy masculine energy. But I started to actually write out and journal, what does healthy divine masculine energy feel like to me? Well, it feels grounding. It feels clear. It feels structured. It feels directional. It feels like it holds me. You know, it's like if feminine is the river, the masculine is the river bank. He holds her and directs her and lets her know where to go.
Sheila Kelly always talks about the pole as the masculine and the dancer as the feminine that is like dancing around it.
And without the pole, she'd fall over. She'd have nothing to hold on to. She needs that pole for grounding, for stabilization, for, to hold her as she dances. So I think if women struggle with having a healthy masculine within them, write out some qualities of what healthy masculine energy feels like that would feel so supportive to your inner feminine. And then ask yourself, how can I cultivate that within myself? And for me, that meant actually creating some more systems and structures in my business. I had to build out some more practical back-end systems and structures, because that was my masculine being like, I want to hold your feminine so she can create and make more money. And it also looked like me creating rituals and practices in my life where I set time and space aside for my feminine to be embodied. And so that's my masculine saying, I'll set the time, I'll set the space, I'll make this commitment, and then you can show up in that space. It's really feeling like, what do you need from your inner masculine to feel more safe, more held, more relaxed, more taken care of? And then how can you start to cultivate that inside of you?
Saying yes to your dreams, is that a masculine or a feminine trait, and how do you say yes to your dreams?
So first, it requires a listening from the feminine. You have to receive those dreams. You have to receive those desires. And we receive them like, they drop into our heart, they drop into our womb, they drop into our body, we feel them. And if we're not receptive and open, we'll miss them. We won't hear what is wanting to be created and birthed through us. So we have to be in the feminine to receive and feel and connect with the energy of what we want to create. It's like like the woman who carries a baby in her womb, right? You hold the seed of that desire inside your body. But then what needs to happen to materialize it is when your inner masculine says, now how do I show up and take action and move forward and bring this into the material world? And I think the way your inner masculine shows up has to really honor what your inner feminine needs. Like you have to be honoring your body and what you have capacity for and what intuitively feels right and aligned. So they're constantly in communication. But I would say the feminine is more the receiving and the holding of the desire, and the masculine is more like, great, how do we take action and start to make this happen in the world?
I love it. What are your 3 top tips to living a stellar life?
Ooh, beautiful question. I would say 1, a deep connection with self. So I'm big on having ways to connect with yourself on a daily basis. And I think that allows you to listen to your intuition, listen to your body, connect to your feminine, live in alignment with your needs. So I think like a deep connection with self is an incredible foundation. I would say for women, a connection with your feminine, because this is really the source of your radiance, your life force, your nourishment. Without a connection with your feminine as a woman, you'll become burnt out, depleted, exhausted, and unfulfilled. So really reconnecting and reclaiming your feminine essence is absolutely part of creating the most magnificent and stellar life possible for yourself. And I guess on the theme of what we've been talking about, I would say the third one would be really claiming what you want, like really listening to your desires. I know for me, if I had been too afraid to follow my desires in my late 20s, if I had been too afraid to sign up for life coach training, I'd never be here with you. It takes the courage to listen to what you want, to claim what you want, and to show up for it even when you're afraid. And that's how you really build a life that is so aligned with, what truly makes you happy in life.
Thank you. And where can people find you? And what can they do with you? Do you have courses? What do you offer?
Yeah, the best place to find me is at my website, conniechapman.com. I also share quite a lot on Instagram, Connie_Chapman. I'm sure you'll link to this. And I also have a podcast as well. I offer a whole range of group programs. I have a program called Divine Femme that takes women on a 6-month journey of feminine embodiment and deep healing. I also have a program called Creatress, which is a feminine manifestation program because I want to teach women how to bring together the feminine and masculine to create what they want. And I also offer a lot of one-on-one coaching, supporting people individually as well. So yeah, everything I offer is available on my website if people want to learn more.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you for this lovely conversation. I had a blast. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
My pleasure. I've loved talking with you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Remember to have a deep connection with yourself. Connect with your feminine essence and your masculine essence. Both men and women, we all need to connect to those parts of us and live in the light and not in the shadow. Embrace the shadow and live in the light. Claim what you want, listen to your desires, and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.